Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For over 150 years, we have gathered here on the ancestral lands of the Dakota people, striving to be a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your identity, your hopes are welcome here. Today, in our practice of justice and care and compassion and solidarity with our community, our doors are temporarily closed because our hearts are still and always open, attending to the intense rise in cases locally. We hope to resume in-person activities again soon, but in the meantime, enjoy church from the comfort of your home, or join us online for coffee hour each week, Sundays at 10:30 on Zoom, or be in touch if there's any ways that we can support you as a church community. And save the date for a week from this Wednesday, February 2nd at 6:30 for a board forum online where you can hear updates from your church leadership as well. This month, our monthly justice partner is Unrestrict Minnesota, working to protect and expand and destigmatize access to abortion care and reproductive health care in Minnesota. We have a special testimony this morning from the Reverend Kelly Clement, a minister from First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. We have an audio recording from her. The video didn't seem to want to play, but you can see her and hear her words about Unrestrict Minnesota.
Hello, Rochester Unitarian Universalists. I'm the Reverend Kelly Clement, one of the ministers at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. I'm delighted to learn that your January offering is designated for an organization near and dear to my heart, Unrestrict Minnesota. Unrestrict is a coalition of 28 organizations, including First Unitarian Society, that is doing something that's never been done before in the fight for reproductive freedom in Minnesota. We are harnessing the power of grassroots organizations to create systemic change. Here are a couple of ways we're doing that right now. We're working with members of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus in the Minnesota legislature to advance a reproductive justice agenda. And our partners are working together to anticipate and plan for the changes that will happen when, not if, Roe v. Wade falls. Abortion is safe in Minnesota, and the 5 abortion clinics in our state expect a huge increase in demand when the citizens of the states around us, particularly North and South Dakota and possibly Wisconsin, lose the right to legal abortion. Your donation to Unrestrict Minnesota goes to powerful and effective advocacy, education, service, and witness efforts to increase access to abortion care in our state. Thank you so much for your generosity and love from here.
Thank you, Reverend Kelly, for that important work. You can give online at uurochmn.org/give. Thank you for your generosity as we support this important work locally and in our world. So wherever you find yourself this day, take a breath and ground yourself in gratitude for today. for this moment, this time to breathe and pause and be. In these words of our minister from the 1870s, we begin our service, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes. May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
Today's chalice lighting words come from Jamie A. Yandel. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may become a beacon of hope in moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown. We light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze, knowing our strength as a prophetic people and a powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call of love.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Have you ever seen something out of place and just ignored it? Like a dirty cup sitting on a table that you've walked by a million times and haven't carried it to the kitchen? Or someone with a piece of food on their face and you didn't tell them because you were too embarrassed? What about something bigger, like somebody being bullied and you walk by because you don't know what to do? Today's story tells us that it's times like these that we need to all use our voices to speak up. Speak Up, written by Miranda Paul and illustrated by Ebony Glenn. There are times we should be quiet. There are days for letting go. But when matters seem important, speak up. Let others know. With so many ways to speak up, like a sign, a smile, a shout, if we could make things better, why not let our words come out? When you're being introduced and they get your name all wrong, speak up. Say your name. You are you, and you belong. When someone spreads a rumor and you're sure it is not true, speak up. State the facts. Truth can open up our view. When a rule isn't fair or has gotten much too old, speak up. Work for change. Justice comes when we are bold. When a person wounds another with their words or with their fists, speak up. Be an ally. Safety comes when we persist. If you see someone who's lonely or they're having a bad day, speak up, share a moment. Kindness goes a long, long way. When you make a small mistake, even if you didn't know, speak up, say you're sorry. Learn to listen and learn to grow. When you have a special day or you're given something neat, speak up. Shout your gratitude. Gratitude makes life so sweet. When you're sad and packed with feelings and the world seems dark and gray, speak up. Ask for help. Friendship chases those clouds away. When trees and creatures suffer from our quick and careless choices, speak up. Rally others. Nature needs our mindful voices. When you know a scary secret about someone getting hurt, speak up. Tell a grown-up. Courage sometimes means you blurt. When the group is taking one path, but you know it's not the way, speak up. Change directions. Leaders don't always obey. Some people speak up loudly, and your words might whisper quiet, one voice can make a difference. So don't hesitate. Go try it.
Somewhere, a wave crashes on the beach, and the roaring surf pounds rock into stone and stone into sand and draws a line between land and sea. In the Pacific Northwest, salmon swim upstream, sometimes leaping directly into the jaws of a grizzly bear to ensure their survival. In Minnesota, a loon leaves a cooling lake and with great effort flaps its wings and paddles its feet to become airborne. A tree branch bends and twists itself into a mysterious and sometimes beautiful shape in an effort to reach more sunlight. The natural world is alive with intention. As humans, we are challenged with the burden of free will, and it takes a bit more conscious effort to live a life of intention. Often, we are in need of some coaching on how to keep attention in our life. Even as I write, I return time and again to my intentions, wondering how exactly they are guiding me. I think about how it was never a goal of mine to become a worship associate, or for that matter, to become a member of this church. But then, setting goals is not always what motivates me. In all honesty, I have never quite understood goals, and I don't usually have real goals in my life, or if I ever set one, it's usually for the short term, like making it to the next light before it turns red. But not to worry, because no matter what my goals are, my intentions are stronger. And one of them is to respect other people, especially on the road, and the other is not wanting to disobey the law. How then is it that I'm here this day to play a part of this service? That last word should be a clue: to be of service in some capacity. I was taught at a young age that I have the ability to be of service to others. And so I learned good intention. And although I've never thought of myself of having any ability to write a reflection beyond that of any other person, I was willing to take a risk and maybe learn something so I might further live out my values in giving some of my time and talent to this spiritual community. I'd like to think most of my life has been guided by some form of good intention, conscious or subconscious. But I've also learned that I have to review things from now and then to make sure I'm actually following what I believe are healthy intentions. We become members of this church with the intention of giving form to our beliefs, and to some degree, create our own reality by acting on our beliefs. I started coming to this church because I almost never totally believe in any one person, thing, or way of doing things. What I do believe in is good intention. And I believe that if you truly have good intention, you are a person of the heart. And if we remain true to our intentions, the heart will allow us to be flexible and change paths when growth and change is necessary, like the path of the branch that twists to reach more sunlight. Under Hinduism, intention and manifestation, it reads like this: positive thoughts bring in positive energy and energize us, establishing in the process peace and harmony in our consciousness. Positive actions bring in positive rewards, and negative actions result in negative consequences. And so, even though at times living our intentions may feel more like the salmon swimming directly into the jaws of the grizzly, keep this positive thought in mind. Not all roads paved with good intention lead to you know where.
invite you to take a deep breath. Breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky, and beyond that the stars shining with their ancient light, holding you in this moment, this place right now, this day. Invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God of many names and beyond all naming. In a world of either or, to choose this or that, or what is right or wrong, as if this world were so simple, so clear. May we lean into a spirituality, an ethic of both. A spirituality that can hold this life and its mess, its questions, its uncertainty, its complexity. And when the righteousness of either or is tossed around as if it's weaponry, may we find the place where love and compassion can bind and heal, where souls are held with tenderness in the many and varied paths and lives we are in, where justice keeps open the possibilities of health and choice, that well-being in mind and body and spirit is worthy and sacred, and the choices we make are held in love. We hold in our hearts this day all those who suffer in mind, in body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you're holding this day, in joy or in sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all the names spoken and unspoken, may we all be held in love and grace. These words of meditation are from the Reverend Greta Jo Seidel, entitled, "Everyone Loves Someone Who Had an Abortion." And let's talk about the flip side, she writes. If you had an abortion, you are loved. If you've never told a soul, or if you share your story regularly, you are loved. If you are confident in your decision, or you wonder if it was the right choice, you are loved. If you are queer, non-binary, trans, two-spirit, or a cis woman, you are loved. If you are child-free by choice, or if you want kids eventually, you are loved. If your choice was driven by medical viability or your own emotional well-being and health, you are loved. If you found a provider to care for you or had to rely on yourself, you are loved. If you are always pro-choice, or if your choice conflicts or conflicted with your beliefs, you are loved. If you love your body or are still angry with your body, you are loved. If you believe God loves you or you believe in nothing divine at all, you are loved. If you find yourself reflected in these words, or your truth is more than words or ink can share, you are loved. May we all be held in a love that knows no bounds and holds us. Amen. If we just talk of thoughts and prayers and don't live out a faith that dares, and don't take on the ways of death, our thoughts and prayers are fleeting breath. If we just dream of what could be and do not build community and do not seek to change our ways, our dreams of change are false displays. If we just sing of doing good and don't move through our neighborhood to learn its hope, to ease its pain, our talk of good is simply vain. God, may our prayers and dreams and songs lead to a faith that takes on wrongs, that works for peace and justice too. Then will our prayers bring joy to you.
An excerpt from The World Where It Is by Beth Spencer. In the atrium of the principal church in a certain Irish city, it is said a girl can find beneath a bench among the tea roses the name of an abortionist. She need only bring a scrap of paper and a bit of char to rub. No one knows who carved the name or when, only that the woman is reliable and clean. If asked, she will tell you of her years in the convent laundry, her escape, her apprenticeship. Her fee is small, and she hums to put her clients at ease. All methods have a failure rate, said the nurse. I recalled the methods that had failed me, including wishful thinking, the most recent. I thought of the flowers my friend had brought when I told her I was pregnant. Daisies, each petal a choice spreading from a yellow wheelhouse of choices. She, a mother of 3 from a huge extended family, whose connection and liveliness I admire. But I, a solitary sort, have never wanted such a life. I am grateful for her friendship, also for my childlessness. Listen, a desperate woman will do what she must, whether it's legal or not. Go abroad or up on a stairwell, off an alley, pray to the goddess of miscarriage. The ground between the sides has no median strip. It's a fault line where one can fall through. Still, I stand at the sideline, taking notes. The way I used to take histories of the patients in the clinic where I worked. I find I cannot hate the shriekers. I wish they'd just go home. Stop war, feed people, plant trees, build schools. Make places for women to lie down in safety, to end what sometimes must be ended.
For centuries, preaching was done to an audience with no seating at all, not without people like we do these days, but from raised pulpits up on a high wall so that crowds could hear the proclamation. Until later on, especially during the Reformation, when apparently people got tired and wanted to sit down. Can't imagine why. That then, coupled with growing social hierarchies, came the creation of box pews, pictured here. This is at King's Chapel in Boston, one of the oldest Unitarian churches in America along the Freedom Trail downtown. It's a visit on our pilgrimage among youth or adults in New England, which will happen this summer for adults, science willing. A church that is Anglican in liturgy and Unitarian in theology, a fascinating church. Box pews, including these that are pictured, were most often purchased and owned as property by families in the congregation. The more money they had, the more they got to choose their spot, likely up front, unless they like to sit in back, which a lot of people do, rather than our practice here of just simple habit of who generally sits where. They purchased their own property, their own piece of the church, furnished it to suit their social identity, including small little heaters or special seats, and each had a locking little door. This was a common practice among various Protestant churches, especially in the 17th and 18th centuries, and slowly shifted in the mid-1800s to free and open seating for all. That's why some churches use the term free church. It's not the only use of that term, but that's where some of it comes from. As social movements then began critiquing the class hierarchy that was out of line with their understanding of church. In theory, though, said the church leadership, people were free to purchase what they could. Everyone was together in that space, even with their differently decorated spaces. It helped support the church. It honored the various and varied resources and access that people had. It was a beautiful combination of capitalism and individualism and religion, a very American trinity. This is one among thousands of examples in society of the ways in which something can be seemingly free. You're free to purchase, free to spend, free to choose, but within the confines of a class system that creates a social landscape that was almost impossible for many to move through. It was a false freedom, a limited liberty, a playing field that was far from even, and still is. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, or, as some have recently said as a critique of American culture, just because you American doesn't mean you should. It's about the difference between what one has the right to do and what is right to do. The moral, ethical choice for the well-being of community. Just because you can buy your seat in church or buy a seat in Congress doesn't make it okay. Or as the ancient epistle says, just because something is lawful does not make it good. In the atrium of the principal church in a certain Irish city, writes Beth Spencer, it is said a girl can find a bench among the tea roses, the name of an abortionist. No one knows who carved the name or when, she writes. Here the poet reminds us that liberty and freedom, the pursuit of happiness, the right to life and health, is only as free as the obstacles in the way, only free within the confines of a complicated real world. As Roe v. Wade is on a national stage again among the regular and continual attacks on women's agency and health care, there is a false dichotomy always lifted up between the life of the mother and the life of the fetus, as if they are separate. To be clear, many theological traditions, including our own, lift up the dignity and divinity of life, all of it, reverence for humanity and the living natural world, and at the same time, the classic definitions of when human life and autonomy begins, according to a thoughtful reading of both the Bible and biology, is at breath. Literally, the Hebrew word nephesh, the breath of life. It's breath, birth, that creates life for a human person. It is at breath and birth where life takes a form that is differently alive than the cells that make up a living organism. It's not at conception or any time before that. That makes human life distinct from the life of a tree or an egg or a sperm on its own. It's for each child that's born, a morning star rises, says the hymn. And to be clear, health of the mother means holistic health. The fetus and the mother are not separate beings until, and then even barely, birth. And sometimes conception is not only random, sometimes it's evil and happens in horrific circumstances. It is not an inherent, unquestioned good. Only a philosophy or a theology that is more intent on controlling people's agency, identity, survival, which is rooted in histories of domination and subjugation of women and people of color and poor people, only that perspective will separate a fetus so much from its life source that it gives more rights to a group of cells than the mother whose body it is part of. A fetus is worthy of well-being and health, yes, but because it's part of a mother's body, not its own. It's an idolatry of controlling reproduction, and it's in a strong history of systems of patriarchy and white supremacy that takes the miracles of life and birth and obstructs access to actual health care and agency and autonomy. And we know the disproportionate burden falls on the marginalized. If you want to show your love for America, writes Alice Walker, love Americans. Smile when you see one flower like his turban rose pink. Rejoice at the eagle feather in the grandfather's braid. If a sister bus rider's hair is especially nappy, a miracle in itself, praise it. She says, how can there be homeless in a land so crammed with houses? Love your country by loving Americans. Salute the soul and the body of who we spectacularly and sometimes pitifully are. That phrase of Alice Walker sticks with me. Salute the soul and the body of who we are, sometimes spectacular, sometimes pitiful. We are always a work in progress, as individuals, as societies, always in process toward being who we are called to be, meant to be. Freedom in its deepest sense, liberty and liberation, is always messy, always on the way. We're always still intending to go further, being intent and paying attention to the ideals we espouse within the realities and obstacles of real everyday life. In these days, with attacks on voting rights still, this pillar of democracy saturated in legacies of discrimination, of poll taxes and gerrymandering and ID laws, and in these days I'm paying attention differently to the language of liberty. And I have to believe that at our best, liberty must transcend the individual. It's liberation for our collective well-being. Another word like the religious word salvation, the modern meaning of our tradition's doctrine of universal salvation is collective liberation. It means that none of us are free until we all are free. It means, like in the words of Dr. King, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, a single garment of destiny. It means that when one vote is limited systematically for some, it hurts our collective humanity. It unravels the fabrics of justice and liberty that should hold us together. It gives a false freedom to some and a quiet, hidden legacy of servitude to the rest. Beneath the bench, writes the poet. It's beneath the bench. So often in this world, our access to liberation is hidden away, available only to those who know how to navigate the signs, like the old songs of the stars, from slavery to freedom, follow the drinking gourd, says the old song. That is fierce, fought for liberation, the type of resilience and strength you need to navigate all that. That is not freedom or liberty. It's like a locked pew, owned by those with resources to own and closed to the rest. Ideals are only real when we actually have things that are attainable in the lives of everyday people, and we are not there yet. I long for a world where options and access are out in the open for health and well-being, be they obvious or complicated or messy decisions. The type of free society where the possibility of health and wholeness is not scratched under a bench or behind a locked door. That we speak up and speak out to be the community we intend to be, and together to review at times what we are supporting or naming in our own lives and actions, like Greg mentioned this morning. Regularly reflecting on how we are living with intent for a better life, a better world, where thoughts and prayers can give us good direction that must be realized and acted upon for effective and generative growth and change and justice. What if freedom was understood not as freedom from anything or everything that annoyed us? Like, I don't like to wear a mask. A mask is not tyranny. That's not what freedom's about. And I think it's pretty clear the my body, my choice argument doesn't work for masks for a lot of reasons. One, masks are not part of your body. Wearing them is not the same as bringing a fetus through 9 months of gestation to life. Also, abortions are not contagious by the air we breathe. And 3, just stop it. So instead of trying to equate these things in the world, instead of freedom being from things, what if we framed it as freedom for things, of affirming rather than denying freedom, the freedom to care for your neighbor, the freedom to provide resources for collective flourishing, free to receive a public education, free to access health care, free to receive a living wage. Is that not in the Constitution? The guaranteed rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At some point, we have to believe that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness needs to include the resources to live. That it's hard to pursue happiness when you don't have real access that make life possible. Health and wellness, wages and learning. If we are meant to be intent on creating communities that are liberated and about freedom and wholeness, and we shouldn't need to scour online and pharmacy shelves all over town for rapid tests for peace of mind for a society to function. You shouldn't have to go through a social obstacle course at some Olympic level of navigation to get an ID or to prove who you are, to be able to mark your name or cast your hopes for your ward or your district or your country. You shouldn't have to dodge the filibuster of a Congress that obstructs democracy by systematically supporting the power of the few over the many when they confuse minority opinion with minority rights. Practices that in theory could be used for good in Congress, but historically have been used to obstruct justice, especially voting rights and anything that is in the cause of liberation for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. You shouldn't have to know the secret places where resources lie, etched into a silent and hidden grain of a church bench, to find a safe enough place, a safe enough soul to treat you as human or as worthy of care. You shouldn't have to do that. If it is our intention to be a free country, one of liberty and life in its fullest sense, then may our liberty move from the self to the community, from liberty to liberation, to our collective well-being, so that instead of some social treasure hunt to find the resources we need to be well, we begin to find the doors unlocked, swung open, the places and names where safety can be found, freely shared like a sign hanging on the side of the wall for the crowds to see, proclaiming as if from some high point, loud and clear enough for the masses to know. Here and here and here and here there is safety. Here you can receive care. Here you can vote. Here we honor every action and choice of courage that has been holding us together for generations and that will lead us forward until we all are free. May it be so. And amen. I invite you, wherever you are, to take a breath. Ground yourself in the moment of now and the gift of this day. And know whatever you are facing, you are loved and held in a love that holds us all. Go yonder, and gather the people. Give them not hell, but courage and hope. Give them something of the love you have found here, and tell all the people that love is our home. Amen.